I'm assuming if you're listening to this episode, then you are, one, a Taylor Swift fan, and two, have listened to this album, so you know what we're talking about. But in case you're just listening for the sake of listening, first of all, thank you. And second of all, we'll kind of set the scene for you a little bit based on Folklore, which is the new album that just came out. Hello and welcome back to the Her Life BLOGCAST. Hey, Allie.
Hello, how are you?
I am so excited that you're here for an episode. I have Allie G with me. Allie G, how does it feel to be here?
I am thrilled. I'm excited. I don't even know what to say. I've been wanting to do this for so long, and I think we have the perfect topic today. It's going to be too good.
I was just going to say that there couldn't be a more perfect time, I feel. This isn't your podcast debut, by the way, because you were on the quarantine episode. So if you throw back to the very beginning, that was the first episode, obviously, that we did in quarantine. And since then, Al, we've been going literally every week, which is insane.
That's crazy. This was like perfect for your content-wise. Like, I feel like this gave you the time to really dedicate it, and
because it got too crazy, like, during the school year. There was just too much going on, so it wasn't as regular. But now it's like, what else do we have to live for? It's just the Her Life BLOGCAST. No, I'm excited. It's been fun. I just posted on my story, Allie, I didn't even tell you this yet, I don't think. But I reached out to my professor because last week's episode was kind of centered around an article book thing that she introduced me to. So I reached out to her and was like, hey, did this episode because I loved this piece that you put on your syllabus. Just wanted to share. And she was like, oh my God, can I put this episode on the syllabus for next year? And I was like, yep. So I'm like, oh my God, we're so academic. Like, I feel so alive. I can't even tell you. So who knows? We could have all kinds of new listeners after that episode. Like, who knows? I'm glad you're here. And Taylor Swift is the most academic thing I could think to talk about because there really is a lot to get into, and I'm really excited.
it's going to be good.
Let's dive in, Al, to our Her Reflections of the week. Every week we go through Her Reflections, going through the acronym with different things that are going on in our lives. The H is for something we're happy about in this moment. E is for something we're excited about for the future. And R is a recent realization that we might have had. Allie, since you are my guest, I'm going to throw it over to you first. What are you happy about right now?
Okay. I'm happy because I am starting to return back to some of the things of my childhood. I started painting again, and I've started dancing again.
Yeah.
And the painting kind of stemmed from a class that I was taking over the summer, teaching art to children, and one of the things was to just create a piece of artwork, and I ended up painting my dad's garden shop. And
so cute.
From there, I just love the process of painting, and I love that you don't know what it's going to end up looking like until you're finished. And so I've just loved that experience, and I'm thinking about starting my own Etsy page, so I'm excited for that. And then dancing I've just kind of been doing for myself, but I'm thinking of posting some things to social media. So I'm happy to be doing those things. I feel good.
Absolutely. I think the time for creative outlets is definitely now, because even though things are sort of getting back to normal, I think it's more important to like keep flexing those muscles and doing things for ourselves, because that's what we had the time to do. And I think it's important to keep that going in like our day-to-day. So I'm excited for you. And that painting is amazing. I'm sure your family freaked out. Like, that is such a nice thing to have now.
My brother was like, how much for it? And I was like,
so cute. I love it. I'm happy for you, Al. That's a great pick. All right, for my happy, I'm just happy because I've had a really productive week. It was kind of a draining week. I was in Arkansas last week, which you guys know, the road trip. But it was just a lot of work to get back to because I like didn't check my email for a week. So it was kind of overwhelming, but I want to run through some of the fun things I've been doing this week because it's just, I don't know, it feels good when you're like moving, you know? Mm-hmm. So the first thing was 3 days this week I went to a PR boot camp. It's run by an agency called AMP3, which I applied to, and they like weren't hiring when I applied, but they were like, hey, we're doing this boot camp. If you're interested, it just kind of gives you a rundown of the industry and just teaches you like all the different things you'd be doing as like an entry-level PR person or as an intern. So it was just cool. There was like 50 girls in the camp, and each person at the agency, it's like a 10-person company, kind of ran through their own spiel about their specialty. And it was just like very eye-opening and very reassuring because all of it was like, I would have so much fun doing that, like events planning for PR and like pitching to media and like fashion magazines to like get a product featured. It all just seems very up my alley. So I feel good that I've been spending all this time writing resumes and cover letters for PR jobs because I'm like, okay, this is something that I could like definitely see myself doing. So that was great. And they started the whole camp thing because one of the managing partners came on. Her name was Allison, and she talked about how when she was starting out, how she just wishes there was someone that told her just a rundown of things she needed to know before starting. So she's like, I wanted to do this, especially now that I have this company, to kind of pay it forward and help the next generation of PR people. And I just felt like, what a good, like, girl power moment. It felt so good to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And I really feel like I learned a lot. It was like a lot of information, but in the best way, because I feel much better prepared and like definitely got to go back and redo some cover letters and switch some things up. But that's what it's for. So that was good. That was the big thing. Also, this week I had an interview, so fingers crossed about that.
You're moving. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. And the last thing, yesterday I shot another commercial for that it's a podcast, because I did like a sort of like a TikTok. Yeah, like it was like a TikTok style kind of on your own shoot. They just wanted you to kind of do an ad-lib voiceover of one of their segments, and then this one is kind of they had a script and everything, and I kind of went through it. So it was weird. I had them on Zoom and like was shooting it on my iPhone, and they were like, do this way, and I was like, I take direction well. Like I just have been telling them I'm an actress this whole time, so I really just had to fake it and act, and I did. So that should be coming out in the coming weeks. I'll share that.
That's a weird experience to have to take direction over Zoom. Like, is that the new normal that we have going on?
I know, like, I guess it's just what you gotta do. It was weird, but I just kind of leaned into the weird because I was like, I'm an actress. But anyway, feeling happy, feeling good, because it really was just a good, productive week. All right, let's move on to the excited section. Allie, what are you excited about?
Okay, I'm super excited. I took a class teaching social studies, and my professor sent us on Juneteenth a syllabus. It's called the Lemonade syllabus, and I'll read.
Is it lemonade, like Beyonce lemonade?
Yeah, like Beyonce.
Okay. Yeah. I was hoping it was because I saw like your title and I was like, please tell me it's Beyonce, because I have a lot to say. Remind me to say something about Beyonce when we're done with this.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just read this whole introduction part. On April 23rd, 2016, Beyonce Knowles Carter released her sixth solo project, Lemonade, through a world premiere on HBO. Transversing through pain and heartache towards healing and joy, the visual album traced through the experiences of many Black women in intimate and social relationships, as they watched several sisters saw themselves and lamented the treatment they endured at the hands of the men who professed to love them and the state that is supposed to protect them. Beyonce spoke to the joys and pains of Black womanhood in such a way that left sisters exposed, yearning for a covering, for real healing and transformation. After Lemonade aired, sisters began to seek resources that would help unpack the rich Black feminist and womanist themes that permeate the visual album. To accomplish this, the Lemonade syllabus hashtag was created. What followed is the essence of Black girl magic. Black women spanning generations and class dynamics use social media to suggest books, films, songs, and poetry primarily by Black women that believe best accompanied Lemonade and spoke to the essence of Black womanhood in its historical and contemporary manifestations. Compiled is over 200 resources that specifically speak to Black women, from classics and fiction to Black feminist theory to inspirational and self-care guides. There are even resources for the young Black girls in our lives. I'd go on, but there's a lot more. But anyway, point being is I just ordered the first book off of the syllabus, so I'm super excited. Called Americana, and I want to get the name right, by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. And she has a really great TED Talk. It's called The Danger of a Single Story. Have you seen it?
I saw the We Should All Be Feminists one, and I read that in a class, so that's how I found her, but like phenomenal. And she's like sampled in a Beyonce song. I forget which one it is now. We teach women to be, it doesn't matter. Okay, but it's like really good, powerful. I love it. So I like the Beyonce Adichie crossover.
Yeah, so I'm super excited, and yeah, that's my
love it. I read also Americana just a couple weeks ago, so I'm so excited to talk about it. And also, I feel like CatScan would have read this too. Have you talked to her about it? I'm sure she.
I haven't talked to her, but I'm sure she definitely, because she told me she saw the TED Talk. So
okay. I'm sure, because it just would be a fun conversation to have. Maybe that could be another episode. That would honestly be a lot of fun, like a book.
We get CatScan on here, maybe.
Do you think she'd come on?
I feel like we could get her. If we're talking about books.
If we're talking about books, we might be able to get her. All right, let's try. I love it. Definitely keep me posted. Let me know what you think about the book. I'm excited to discuss.
I know.
I'm so excited because, so when I came back from Arkansas, I have to quarantine for 2 weeks because Arkansas is like on the list that the governor put out of like, you must quarantine because these are bad hotspot areas. So the day that my quarantine is over, my friend Julia Bauer, shout out Julie, is having a big pool party with the homegirls from home. We got together one other time for a dinner, which was super fun, but then things kind of started getting bad in terms of Corona again, so we've all kind of been separated, and now it's like getting to the point where people are going back to school. A lot of us are doing, it's not me, a lot of them are doing master's programs and stuff, so we're going to be going back to school, and we're going to kind of be split up again. So this is like the last hurrah of the summer. So that's on Friday, the day my quarantine ends. I'm really excited about that. Then on Saturday, I'm going to Mystic, Connecticut to go to Emma's cousin's wedding. So I'm so excited to be reunited with Emma. I can't even tell you. And her whole family is literally amazing. So it's just going to be fun to see them again because I was at the reunion last summer. And then finally on Sunday, it's Sarah's 21st birthday, my little sister. So that's going to be another big event. And I'm just excited. And you know how like a quarantine birthday kind of sucks. You know this very well. But I think you just got to make the most of it. So I'm hoping to do that with Sarah. Exciting weekend coming up.
I'm excited for you. That sounds like a jam-packed, for Corona, that's a big weekend.
It's like it's been nothing for so long, and then it's like, bam, everything. Yeah. But that's how it should be. Why not?
Look it all in. I love it.
Okay, let's move on to realization. Al, what have you been realizing recently?
Okay. Big realization this week. Self-love is tough. It is not easy whatsoever. I think for a very long time, I've always thought of like making choices for myself and like what's going to be best for me feels selfish in a way. Mm-hmm. So I think like unlearning that and trying to have this mindset of like you can make a choice for you and it doesn't have to come across as selfish. Like it's all right. So I think that was a big realization this week, and like just using this time that we have to focus on that and really, I don't know, like use it to be okay with making decisions for me.
Yeah. Love that. But also, yeah, and I feel like we've talked about this before too, where I think there is such a dichotomy just in like young people's lives and probably old people's lives too, but particularly with like our generation, I think, because self-care is such a big thing and like a buzzword, and self-love is always top of mind, but at the same time I feel like you have a list of responsibilities and people and things that you have to prioritize, so it's just hard to like strike the balance. But it seems like you're doing a good job. I love you. Self-love, I love you. This is so good. I feel like giddy. I'm like not used to having you on this, so it's just like fun and exciting. My realization is that we are all going through it. And by that I mean you literally never know the like very complicated backstories of people's situations. And I think this could be like big scale and small scale. I'll give you an example. I'm also doing a little part-time social media gig for an author who was actually featured on the podcast, Alexis Schoen. She wrote Entry Level Boss, and I did a book review for her, and then we've kept in touch, and it worked out that I'm doing some Instagram stuff for her right now. Anyway, part of the gig is partaking in her Entry Level Boss School, which is essentially a job search course that helps you fix the things you're doing wrong and like perfect your resume and write a better cover letter and just fix your whole approach to the job search to make it more efficient and productive and joyful, like to actually make it a fun process. Mm-hmm. So part of that is this 4-week course, and we had the first class last week, and just sitting on the Zoom call with one after another explaining these incredibly nuanced and complicated situations of like, my fiance is graduating from med school and she's going to start her thing, so I only have 3 months to do this job. Should I prioritize salary or what I love to do before we move to Michigan to start her residency? And I'm like, oh my God, like everyone is really just going through it. So I think it's so easy to get caught up in your own, like, my life is so hard because coronavirus stopped me from getting the job I wanted and now I'm stuck home for the summer. But it's like, join the club, like we're all going through it. So I think there's some kind of beauty in that solidarity, and also just a lesson in perspective, a lesson in compassion. Like everybody's dealing with some stuff all the time. So I think it's just good to keep that in the back of your mind. It's definitely a realization I had.
For everyone, and I think especially during a time like this when we're like not able to connect physically with people mm-hmm. quite as much, it's so easy to think like, oh, the world's ending for me, and it's like mm-hmm. reassuring to like hear other stories, or like it's just eye-opening in a way, you know?
1,000%. Okay, now for the main event, you guys. I don't even know how to preface this other than to say that I am so excited, but obviously Taylor Swift just released a very surprise album, and the world has not stopped talking about it, and for good reason. This has been like a pop culture moment for so many reasons. I think A, because it's a surprise, especially because she just put out an album less than a year ago. So no one was expecting this much music from her, like maybe a single, but not a whole album, start to finish, dropped 24 hours after she made the announcement. Literally insane. Okay, I have some quotes from Rolling Stone, who did like the first review of it. And I just think it does a good job of capturing. I'm assuming if you're listening to this episode, then you are, one, a Taylor Swift fan, and two, have listened to this album, so you know what we're talking about. But in case you're just listening for the sake of listening, first of all, thank you. And second of all, we'll kind of set the scene for you a little bit based on Folklore, which is the new album that just came out. So first of all, important to note, this is the first album of Taylor's 30s. It's a new decade in her life, and I think you could tell the tone shift. Plus, it's like a new time in all of our lives because we're quarantined. So I think those two things are really coming together and making this a very different sound than anything we've heard. Here's a few quotes. Number 1, but the real surprise is the music itself, the most head-spinning, heartbreaking, emotionally ambitious songs of her life. Let's just take a moment to break down, like, that is such a claim, because first of all, the amount of songs that Taylor Swift has is insane. I made a playlist of all of her songs pre-Folklore because that's what we listened to on the way to Arkansas and on the way home from Arkansas, and it is a 9-hour playlist pre-Folklore, so that's another hour of content. So she has literally 10 hours of content, and they're saying these are the best, most emotionally ambitious songs of her life. That's big, and I think it's true. Would you say?
I think it's true. Yeah,
I agree. Okay, a few more quotes.
How could it not be during this year? Like, how could she not? Like, we're all feeling that, you know?
1,000%. And it's something that I find so interesting with like the creative process, because I think on the one hand, it's like, yes, you have all this time to channel your creative energy in a productive way. But on the other hand, I'm like, are you having the normal inspirations that you normally would? Like, I imagine this might be a really hard time to be creative for some people, but obviously not for Taylor Swift. And like, thank God, because you saved us all. You know what I'm saying? Another quote that I thought was really spot on, it's as far beyond Lover as Lover was beyond Reputation, because I think between those two albums, we saw a major, major shift, and now we're seeing like an even crazier shift. It's just wild how she keeps reinventing herself.
Yeah.
I think it's phenomenal. And then finally, it's going to take weeks, if not decades, to puzzle out all the intricately interwoven narrative details of these songs. And again, true. I haven't sat down with the lyrics of these individual songs yet, but it's something I want to do because there's just so much. Like, the vibe of it is something you get just by listening and having it on in the background, but you can get so into it.
She released like on YouTube like the lyric videos, and I watched a couple of them, and I was like writing down some of the things because I was just like, what? Like, this just, it's so poetic. It's so poetic, and I love it. My first listening to it was, like, when it first came out. So it was, like, midnight. I was, like, packing for my trip, whatever. And it was just, like, very, like, somber is what I got from it at first. Like, that's just, like, the total mood that I got from it. But, I don't know, like, I just felt like Taylor Swift, like, read my mind, and it was, like, this is what I needed right now, and thank you.
Yeah. No, she's incredible. The thing that struck me the most was just the shock of it all. Like, I was so surprised that it was happening and so quickly. Because normally Taylor Swift announces it months and months before, so there's all this.
It's always like she's dropping hints, and it's that, and this was just so different because it was like, here you go.
I have a couple things to say. One, I have two critiques, if I may, and I have no right to have a critique because Taylor Swift is.
You literally have a right to critique. It's
fair. But, like, know that this takes nothing away from my love for Taylor Swift and all she does, because she can do no wrong. But here are my two critiques, if I have to, just to make it fair. One, I think it's kind of lame and trying too hard to make all of your song titles lowercase. I'm sorry. I just feel like that's something we all do when we're, like, trying to be artsy, but I don't know if it really has, like, an actual creative meaning other than to just do it because you did it. What do you think?
I don't mind it. I like it.
I was annoyed when she made Reputation a lowercase r. Like, that just annoyed. It just, like, bothered me because her songs weren't like that.
I feel like it works for this one, though.
I guess that's fair.
I think the font that she uses, like, I think it just worked for it. I think it went with the tone of it. I don't know why, but I just enjoy it for this.
That's fair. Okay, I'll allow it. And I think it's important to note that on, like, half my Spotify playlist, I put all lowercase titles because I think it makes it more cool and artsy. So, like, who the hell am I to say that? But it just means that I am Taylor Swift.
I love it.
I have no right to say that. My other critique, I'm so not into Taylor Swift saying the F word.
That was really shocking. All the cursing, I was like, whoa, who is this?
Because it's not just, like, one. There's multiple. And in one song, it's in the chorus. So she repeats it. Yeah. And I'm like, Taylor. I forgot shocked.
That. Yeah, that was shocking.
I could have went without it personally. But again, who am I to tell Taylor Swift how to express herself?
Also, like, she's in her 30s. Like, at this point, she doesn't care, you know? She's like,
True.
gonna get my point across. This is what
True. I think we can agree that this is an unfiltered kind of creative expression for her. So if
It's also, I believe, her first album that she herself has put out, right? Like,
I actually don't know. You're probably right.
I think so. Or, like, she has, like, the rights to it in some way.
I think so, because last summer was all that nonsense with Big Machine and the Scooter Braun and, like, that whole mess of a situation, which was insane. But, yeah, I think it's just a good, but definitely, like, not as mainstream as she normally went, I would say. And we'll get into that, because we're going to go through literally album by album and, like, how she kind of has evolved. But what else did I want to say something else. Oh, yes. Okay. And this brings me back to the Beyonce point that I wanted to make. I think Folklore is a really great example of something that's like super duper mainstream, because let's face it, Taylor Swift is the kind of celebrity that anything she does is going to get a lot of buzz. It's not like an indie crowd. It's not a hipster thing. It is like super duper mainstream just because she is who she is. But on the other hand of that, I think most of the like top 40 stuff that we get now, there isn't much substance to, and maybe that's making too broad of a statement, but I think by and large that's a fair statement to say. We're like, the chord progressions aren't interesting, the lyrics aren't that interesting, they're just catchy songs that people like to sing in like the summer. But this is so notably different from that, because first of all, there aren't any like peppy, like upbeat songs. It's all kind of this more somber vibe, which you were noting earlier, but also there's so much to parse out, and like the lyricism is so complex, and you can really analyze it like you would a poem. And you said that earlier, it's like poetry, because it is. Like, obviously songs are poetry, but this especially so. So I just think there's a cool,
not just like I'm gonna repeat the same thing over and over. Like,
exactly,
she's telling a story throughout it, and I think she's evolved. You know, she has gotten more into that storytelling.
Totally. And I just think it's cool that it almost like invites more casual listeners into that space of being a critical listener, or just like taking it from a more even academic approach and like really breaking it down and getting everything you can out of it. And I don't think there's too many super mainstream artists that we can say this about, with the exception of a Beyonce, who puts out Lemonade, and it obviously has a ton of popular success, but also has that like deep cultural capital of representing so much more than the visual album itself. So I think that's a comparison we might draw, and I'm sure there's some Beyonce fans who are like, Taylor Swift is nothing compared to Beyonce, but like, and obviously like Beyonce stands for like bigger, more important things in some regards, but I'm just saying, I think there's very few people that we could point to and be like, they're doing this thing of being a superstar, but also giving us stuff to really analyze and like take our time with. Maybe Kendrick Lamar is the only other example. I feel like boys like Kendrick Lamar and would be like, his lyricism is great. I'm not that big of a fan, so I really don't know.
I don't really know. I can't speak on it, but
neither. Okay. Maybe. That's what I wanted to say about Folklore and Lemonade, essentially. Okay, we're going to do the album by album breakdown, but before that, Allie, I want to play, it's not even a game, it's just like, give me your pick. Taylor Swift's hottest ex-boyfriend.
I've gone through them.
Okay, I didn't look up a list, I just went with the first one that came into my mind, so I'm curious what you have to say.
So, I don't think Taylor Swift and I have the same taste, really. Nobody, like, I was really like, ooh, definitely this one. But I think if I had to, it's between Calvin Harris and Jake Gyllenhaal.
That's fair. Oh, you froze for a second. Are you with me?
I'm here.
Okay, so you're between Calvin Harris and Jake Gyllenhaal. Excellent picks. My initial pick was Jake Gyllenhaal, and that's what I wrote in white on the Google Doc because I didn't want us to share. I wanted raw reactions. But when you were saying that, I thought of a new one, and I'm changing my pick.
Okay.
Joe Jonas.
Okay.
Joe Jonas, and I had a change of heart when I saw the Jonas Brothers in concert last summer, again with Julie Bauer, shout out Julie, because I was watching the concert. I've always been a ride or die Nick, like Nick was my guy always, and then I was there at the concert and I looked into Joe's eyes and I just felt a connection, and since then I have not changed my, like I completely had a change of heart in that one moment, and Joe Jonas is the hottest guy to me now.
Wow. Do you know I met him?
What?
At a Hannah Montana concert, and I was part of the Miley World on some internet. And my mom talked to the security guard, and she was like, what does she get? Like, what are the benefits? And somehow she got me to get backstage.
Mama G!
Yeah.
So you met all the Jonas Brothers, or just
I shook their hands, and they signed something for me. That's as far as I got.
That's phenomenal.
It's one of my fun facts is I met them when I was, like, 11.
That's a great fun fact.
Yeah. And they weren't even, like, they were opening for Hannah Montana, so they weren't even, like, the Jonas Brothers yet.
You got them before they were the Jonas Brothers.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to say something else about Joe Jonas because I don't know if you caught in the one song, I think it's Invisible String.
I don't listen to that one quite as much.
There's a line in it that was like, the color of the axe that I grind with my exes or something. Now I send their babies presents. And I read this article about how the only ex of hers to have a baby is Joe Jonas, who just had a baby with Sophie Turner. Yeah. And they named her Willa, which I think is so cute. But anyway, what a full circle moment.
Because they just had her like a day after this came out, right?
So this is like of the moment
yeah.
Taylor Swift's thoughts. So anyway, Joe Jonas, super hot. Jake Gyllenhaal's got to be up there, though. I'm with you on that one. But still, again, not like the hottest people in Hollywood, I would agree. A star-studded list, but not the hottest list. I also think we can throw in Taylor Lautner. That was like a thing, but
for the time that they were together, I'd say yes. But like,
agreed.
Look at them, I'm like,
I totally agree. I think that's a fair way to put it.
At the time, I was like, oh, Joe Jonas. But now I'm like,
see, I'm going to disagree with you there. I think Joe Jonas is at his peak, like, sexiness now. I don't think he's hot. I don't think he's cute. I think he's a sexy guy.
I still think I'd go Nick, though.
I get a smarmy vibe from Nick sometimes. It kills me to say that. Anyway, okay. All right, good picks, though. Let's begin now with Taylor Swift's first studio album, self-titled Taylor Swift. It came out in October of 2006. Her debut single was Tim McGraw, obviously a classic. She put out with Big Machine Records, again, back in 2006. It made top 10 of the country charts. She really, came out with a bang. And then her follow-up single was Teardrops on My Guitar. And I remember this because I watched her True Hollywood Story 12,000 times when I was little. This was a big, risky kind of move because they were two slow songs in a row. And they were like, don't you want to put out our song or one of the upbeat kind of songs to show people that you can have a fun track? And she was like, no. These two are the best. This is what I want to start with, and made this creative decision as a 16-year-old. Yeah. And look at her now.
I feel like Teardrops on My Guitar.
Banger.
I didn't even know who that was by, but I remember listening to it on the radio again and again. And I love that song as a little kid. Okay. And then years later, I realized that it was her. And I was like, oh my God.
So good. Oh.
Yeah.
Allie, what would you say is your favorite song from Taylor Swift album? We're going to go through this with every album just to give the listeners a sneak preview. But what would you say for album number one? I'd
say Our Song.
A classic.
It's so upbeat. It's such a feel good. And I have distinct memories of me singing and dancing to the song in the mirror. And I just think it's cute. The idea of somebody's song being all the little moments that they share together,
so
the door slamming, talking on the phone. It's just cute. I love it.
It's just, you can't not be happy when you're listening to that song. That is a mood booster. I love it.
Yeah.
Still a cherished song among Taylor fans and just music fans, let's be real. My favorite I picked, and also it's impossible to pick favorite songs from these albums because so many of them have so many great ones. Really hard. But I went for this one, Should Have Said No, because I think that's such a fun and edgy song. I think it had the same energy of her Picture to Burn kind of moment of screw you, you did me wrong and you're gonna regret it, and now look at her. There's no better revenge than that level of stardom. I can't even imagine how good she feels. That's all I want for myself, really. I think this is a good example. Should Have Said No is a good example of her taking real pain and making an anthem to help other girls through the movement. And if there's anything that Taylor Swift does well, it is that. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I agree. I think you said something along the lines of she's writing to us and for herself, right? You said? Totally. How would you describe the overall feel of this first album, Taylor Swift? The first word that comes to mind is innocence. Because I think back to when she's writing it. I think some of these songs she wrote, she was 13 years old. Yeah. That's crazy to me. Insane. And she was able to produce an out. What?
It's crazy.
22. I can't even fathom trying to write a song. It's insane to me. So it's crazy. I think that, and then just I don't know. It's just simple little love stories. I don't know.
Yeah, it's very cutesy, and the country vibe definitely was speaking to me at the time. I think I grew up kind of listening to that. My mom was very into 90s country music and the Shania Twains and Jody Messinas of the world.
Concert. So I think that's probably where all my country kind of.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of where we led into of transitioning from our mom's music to our music, and Taylor Swift kind of was the gap. So I think that's a cool transition point. But yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think we see how strong of a storyteller she is even from very young age. Okay, let's move on. Fearless is album number 2. This came out in November of 2008. let's just kick it right off. What's your favorite song from Fearless?
Oh, The Best Day. Yeah. Okay.
So good.
I think that one's so sweet, and I love it because if you're a Taylor Swift fan, you know it's about like just her and her mom, and like her mom picking her up from school and going like window shopping or whatever, and just her mom being her best friend. And I think as like a tween or a teen, like that's kind of the time where you're like rebelling against your parents, and like a lot of girls are like embarrassed or like they don't want anything to do with their mom, and like I never really felt that way growing up. I mean, like I've had like tips or whatever, but like for the most part, my mom's my best friend.
Yeah.
So it was just like so nice to have a song out there that was like, hey, it's okay to like have your mom be your best friend, and it was endearing. So that's always been my like top on that list.
Yeah, I agree. That's just a cute song. I remember like my memory with this song comes later, like when I was in college, really missing my mom and wishing we could just like go shopping for the day, and like the song would come on shuffle and I'd be like destroyed because she just nails that relationship so well, like in just its description, and you have had all those experiences with your mom and it's just really beautiful. Good pick, good pick. I'm gonna go Love Story for my favorite track from this album because it's such a classic.
Yeah.
And the music video, I think something we could really get into are how good her music videos and how like iconic those have become. This was obviously the Romeo and Juliet kind of vibe. They had the whole dance. And I love that like that's something that sticks with her. Like she performs that at every show. It's such a classic Taylor Swift song. I want to go through a couple honorable mentions from this album because again there are so many. Hey Steven. There's no better crush-worthy song than Hey Steven. Like that'll make you fall in love with just about anybody. I love the vibe. Forever and Always, the iconic breakup track post Joe Jonas, so good. And obviously Fearless, the title track. Kissing in the Rain. God.
I also thought like I loved 15 as well.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. It was good to have that in the back of my mind before even going into high school.
Yeah.
Because I think like so easily like you or let like the innocence in you like fall for someone. And I think like that kind of like was like, hey,
she warned us.
Like the first guy you see, you know.
She was like the big sister kind of figure of like, hey, this is exciting, but don't get ahead of yourselves, girls. And like that's a cool relationship to have with your favorite artist, yeah?
Yeah. Also have to discuss, because we went to the concert for Fearless.
Yes, tell me everything.
It was for my 12th birthday. I got like tickets. I went with my mom and my friend Victoria, and I remember the one thing that like stands out to me is like she did a lot of hair flips. Like that was her thing. Mm-hmm. And I remember my mom being like, what is she doing? And I was like, it's fine. She's fine. Like, but, I mean, that sticks out to me. And then I remember her just being like amazed that so many people were singing her songs. Like I saw her at Madison Square Garden. Like that was like her first like big moment of like breaking out and like having people like come to see her. Like so cool memory to have that like she was so young, and I just remember her face of like just being like, what? You're all here to see me.
It must be insane. Like, I just can't imagine to, like, witness somebody's dreams coming true in the way that we did, because we really did it. In so many ways, it feels like we grew up with her, because we did. So it's just very cool to, like, grow up just a few steps behind her. And we're going to talk about that, too, because I feel like we're a couple albums behind her, kind of. So it's like we're relating with things that happened. Anyway, we'll get into it. Yeah. I wanted to talk quickly about the overall vibe of Fearless, because I think we get a better idea of, like, what Taylor Swift's vibe is with this sophomore effort. We have here very, like, bubblegum pop messaging. Wouldn't you say? Think of like a Hey Steven, love is in the air. You care about nothing except for your crush in this moment. And it's just very light and fun and like easy breezy. So even though it's country songs, I think you have very pop, Mandy Moore, Britney Spears kind of messaging. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah.
So with that, I think the shift that will come, spoiler alert, with Taylor Swift into the more pop realm, explicitly pop realm.
Right.
Maybe isn't that surprising, because that's the kind of messages that she's always been sending, just in a more artsy way, kind of, you know? Mm-hmm. Another thing I wanted to mention with this album specifically, and Allie mentioned it earlier, I feel like Taylor Swift writes for two people and two people only. One, herself, like she writes as a cathartic experience for whatever she's going through, and that's what makes it so authentic and real as a listener. But she's also writing for that listener, but that one specific listener. I think she always has like one girl in mind who this might help one day. And now think of like the masses of people that have experience similar things and are helped by her music and just feel so seen and heard because of these albums that she puts out. So I think this is the first time we're really seeing that, where like girls are listening and being like, I feel this in my soul. This is where we start seeing those actual relationships with fans evolving in big ways. And you can speak to that with your concert experience.
I love the way that you like phrase that, where it's like she's not writing this for anybody else. Like she's writing this for herself in a cathartic way, and she's writing it to us, you know? And it's beautiful. It's like a little love letter all about us. And I don't know.
Yeah, totally. Okay, number 3, Speak Now, October 2010. What would you say is your favorite track?
This one I have Never Grow Up. Again, another like emotional one.
Family.
Yeah. I put this in like a video montage for my brother when he was leaving for college. And like it was the first time I saw him like kind of tear up a little.
Aww.
And because it's like such a big moment when you're like leaving home for the first time. And
Totally.
I was like going into high school, he was going away to college, and it was over, I don't know, it was just such a big moment. It's like the household was never going to be the same. It never was going to be like 3 kids growing up, you know? Mm-hmm. So I always love that one. I think it's fun. It's like, don't forget like where you came from, and like it's scarier than I thought it would be. Like all you want to do for the longest time is grow up, and then all of a sudden you get there and you're like, whoa, wait a minute.
Totally. No, totally. It's a great song. Yeah.
I love some of those that aren't though, that are like hidden in the album, you know, where it's like, ooh.
And like the ones where it's like only the true fans will know this. Like if she plays it at a show and like the ones singing along are like the true fans who like worship the album as a whole, not just the songs that are top 40 sensations. I'm totally with you. My favorite from Speak Now, I think, is The Story of Us. I think that's such a fun song.
This one's hitting me.
Oh, good. It's just like fun, and I think it really just, again, like goes through the whole narrative of a relationship in a really unique way. She puts a cool lens on it. I remember, this is like so embarrassing, but I remember so vividly, I was in study hall. It was probably like the 7th grade, because I'm trying to trace back like when I would have been in 7th grade when this came out. So I remember sitting in a study hall, like what room it was, and listening to my headphones and like thinking I was so cool. The Story of Us is on, and I hear the lyric, I never heard silence quite this loud. And I just thought, I was like, this is art. This is poetry. Like, it spoke to my soul. I, like, wrote it in my planner. I was like, this is the lyric.
I almost wrote that like, down. Because I was listening today. I was like, ooh.
It's a good lyric. Like, I feel it still in my soul. And I just think, oh, my God. So I had to put that in. I wrote in this thing, damn, this is poetry, in italics. Like, that's the feeling that it gives me. I love it so much. I think this album as a whole is one that has more of like a concept of it as an album. You know what I'm saying? Like I think every song kind of feeds into it, and she tells a whole story, because this is the album that had Mine on it. Mine is a good storytelling song of picturing her life, and in the music video she has her little blonde kids running around, and it's so cute. I don't know, I just think the whole album as a whole, because then you have like the Never Grow Up one. It all just kind of feeds into this.
Like Speak Now, that song itself, like that just doesn't seem like her in any way. Like to be the one that like does the, like I loved it when it came out and I like jammed to it hardcore, but I was like, wait, this doesn't seem like the one that would be the one. And like I guess she admits it in the song itself. She's like, I'm not the one to break up a white fair occasion or something like that. But
this I remember also from the E! True Hollywood Story. A little fun fact about this song. She had a dream that she like crashed a wedding and broke it up, and then that's what inspired this song. So she thinking, so that like makes a little bit more sense, where like she wouldn't actually do this. It was just like a dream that she turned into a song. But also I think it speaks to the fact that like we all have that little piece of us. I don't know if you're in love with someone who like is otherwise I was gonna say entangled. You have this like little like revenge fantasy of like, oh, I'll get him back, da da da. And also this is the same album as Better Than Revenge, so you know she was dealing with something where some girl wronged her and she was about to steal the man back. Like, you know, this was like subconsciously in her head. So I think it's cool to like give us that little outlet. Like if Taylor Swift had a fantasy about breaking up a wedding, so can we, you know? Thank you, Taylor, for giving me the green light on that one. You made a good point on here though that I wanted to bring up. This is kind of like her last teen album. I think this is definitely a good shifting point where we see like the next album is the Red album, and that's like definitely very different. So this is, I think, the last classic country Taylor,
yeah. And I think even like imagery wise, like she has this like bubbly, like young, like curly hair, fluffy dresses, like
totally. So then as we mentioned, we transitioned to Red, which was an album that came out October of 2012. Definitely a shift in this album. We definitely have more pop vibes, which we'll get into first. But first, we need to talk about the standout track of the album that I don't think anyone saw coming, including Taylor Swift, but has now stood out as just, I'm going to say it's the best Taylor Swift song of all time, maybe the best song of all time. I genuinely feel that strongly about this song. I think it's absolute art, and from top to bottom, all too well.
Yeah, I have to agree.
It's
so good. I tried to write words to put down, and I didn't know what to say because I was just like, this has been a song that I've listened to on repeat for months now. It's like, it's just beautiful. I love it.
There's just such an, I feel almost dumb talking about it. You're right. There like aren't many words to describe the feeling of the song. And I think anyone who knows it and appreciates it will know what I'm saying. I think it does such a good job of describing like honest to God love. Like she was in love with Jake Gyllenhaal with her whole soul. And if she wasn't, she wouldn't have been able to write the song. Like there was genuine, strong feelings there, and it didn't work out, but like that happens in life. So I think it's a really good example of like, you can have these really huge formative relationships and like you're gonna bounce back and get over it, but it's okay to like feel it. Reminisce on the scarf that you left at his sister's house. Like that's okay. And I think that's such good permission to be granted as a fan and as a young woman listener.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
I love it so much. I'm gonna listen like that after doing all of this. Like that's gonna be the song that I play on a loop as I'm like editing this tonight because it's so good. It's
good. I'm speechless. It's just something that like speaks to your soul, and you're just like, oh.
Genuinely. She talked about this in an interview at some point too. Just her shock factor at how this has become such a well-known Taylor Swift song. Because again, it was never on the radio. It was never a single. Like it wasn't a popular song in that regard, but I think among fans it's recognized as this like really powerful love song. And it's also weird because it's not set up like a normal song on the radio. Like there's not clean cut verses and a chorus that repeats exactly the same, and it's like a very long song. It's 5.5 minutes long, so it's just a weird structure, and I think she was like surprised that it worked, but also like I saw an Instagram post the other day from like one of the Bravo accounts I follow, but they were talking about folklore and then like reminiscing on Taylor Swift. And they posted a picture of Taylor Swift and Jake Gyllenhaal and said, man, like imagine being Jake Gyllenhaal and knowing that you were the peak of Taylor Swift's like creative energy. Even if the relationship wasn't great and they weren't meant to be together, but knowing that like no one will ever compete with the creative energy harnessed from that relationship. And I think that's just such a cool thing to think about. I can't get over it. Oh my God. Okay.
So different from the whole vibe of the album altogether. Totally. I mean, like it ties in because I think like at the time I like had no interest in the album, to be honest. Like it was so different from what she had done, and I was like, oh, I'm not gonna like it. Like I just kind of like wrote it off. Now years later I've like revisited it, and I think it just speaks to me so much more now in the place that I am, and I think it's probably because I'm at the age she was when she wrote it, which I think is just, I don't know, I love that like now it's like a full circle moment of like 22, and that's where I'm at, and it just rings more true to me than it did when it first came out.
Also, just for a second, I don't think I ever actually thought about the fact that Taylor Swift was 22 when she dated Jake Gyllenhaal. How is that real life? Like, as a 22-year-old, you're dating, like, a major... Like, Jake Gyllenhaal is a name. Holy crap.
Let's look that one up.
How old is Jake Gyllenhaal? You look that up. In the meantime, I'll continue with our Red album analysis. So this, as Allie mentioned earlier, is the start of her kind of pop transition. This was still technically a country album. It was on the country charts, but we have songs like 22, We Are Never Getting Back Together. I Knew You Were Trouble was a single that came out, one of the first singles, I think, for that album, and it just has a notably different vibe.
He is 39 years old, so I think they're 9 years apart.
Wow. So when she was 22, he was
30. 31.
Wow. So see, it's not that weird. We could be dating 31-year-olds. Also, like, stardom doesn't count. Like, I think it's very different in Hollywood, and, like, dating celebrities, ages, like, don't really matter as much. It's, like, a different, I think that's fair.
Different world there.
It totally is. It totally is. But anyway, let's move on to the official beginning of Taylor Swift's pop career, 1989. 1989 came out in October of 2014. Blatantly pop. She totally switched. I remember her saying in an interview once, she's like, people aren't surprised that I'm switching to pop. People are surprised I'm being honest about it. Like, I think people expected her to just keep the country label and do this pop kind of crossover thing, but instead she was like, this is what my soul's telling me to do.
Yeah.
A bold move, but obviously one that paid off. Like, she's doing fine. Yeah. What is your favorite song from 1989?
My favorite is This Love. I think it,
choice.
yeah, I don't know. I just think it's like very catchy, and I think it rings true. Like it's like this love is good, this love is bad, this love came back to me. Like it's just, I don't know. I think it speaks true to what love can be. It can be this really wonderful experience, or it could be really painful in ways. And I don't know, I just love it.
Yeah, great song, great song.
First of all, it's very difficult to choose one song because there are so many.
We could easily have done an episode per album. Easily. This could have been a whole series and maybe something to revisit. Like, I wouldn't be that mad at that because there's a lot of content here.
Yeah. Like, Out of the Woods, another great one. Like,
yeah. Yeah. And like Blank Space, like think about the era of Blank Space when that single came out and she's recognizing all the things that are being said about her in the press and kind of clapping back in this cool, catchy way, being like, you can say all of this about me. I'm going to write a hit song and make millions of dollars off of it. Thank you for being so mean to me. Like, that is iconic.
Yeah.
So good.
Like, it's not just all about like, oh, I'm having this love story's going on, or this is like, hey, this is about me. Like, this is like what I'm putting out there. This is it. Does every song doesn't have to relate to whatever.
1,000%. And I think that's the transition that carries us into Reputation, because obviously so much of Reputation was obviously there's love songs on that album, and like there's whatever, like songs about relationships.
Not to knock any of the past or like, thinking about that, but I think like she's discovered herself in a whole new way, and she's able to express herself.
And it's what the fans need. You know what I mean? Like, we have enough in our arsenal to like get through whatever romantic thing happens to us. Now we need like an empowering track to get me like through my own coming of age.
I don't think that she could have released songs like that before this.
Totally agree. She needed to do the living first. This is so good. Expert analysis, Allie G. Okay, my favorite that I picked from 1989 is Style. I just think that's such a fun and sexy song. I'm going to say it. I think it's very sexy. It's a good, like, strut song. This is on all my strut playlists. To, like, walk like you own the freaking place.
Oh, yeah.
Very empowering to me. But, again, I think a shift, because it's like Taylor Swift wasn't putting out sexy songs before this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no.
Like, she wasn't. We get more of that on Reputation with, like, more, and we'll talk about it. But, like, this is the first kind of, like, think about that intro music. Like, she is, like, driving her car to her man's house, and it's Harry Styles, and she does not give an F what you think about it.
Like, I love the play with words there. Like, we never go out of style. Like,
she is a genius. I stand by it. Love Style. Love Taylor. I'm going to throw out another honorable mention for this one. You Are in Love. What a great love song. I think this is on, if I had a list and I don't have a list, maybe I should make one of like top 10 love songs of my life. And also like, they're not my love songs. Like, I haven't lived yet. But you know what I'm saying? Like, songs like speak to me that I'm like, oh, this must be what it's like to be like super duper in love. This is definitely one of them. I think it's so, I don't know, again, it's just like taking those very simple moments, drawing them out and like teaching us what it means to feel love. It's so beautiful. I just love that song. I think it's so great. There's obviously a ton of other bangers on that track, but
yeah, I wanted to mention one more. Welcome to New York.
Yes.
I remember because I was like commuting back and forth like the summer before, because this came out I think in October. But like after that, like I played that over and over. I was like, yes, like New York energy is where I need to be. Like, it has been waiting for me, and I'm gonna go out there and take it by storm. And
yeah. And also when she starts to get, I don't want to say political because it's not, but like this is where she starts her LGBTQ allyship, because there's a line in there that's like girls and girls and boys, and I remember that being a little bit like, oh my God. But you know what I mean? So she's like planting the seeds of the woman and the activist that she would become. I wanted to talk a little bit about my concert experience with the 1989 tour, and also talk a little bit about that tour because I think it was another like big shift for her. But I saw it with, again, Julia Bauer, shout out Julie, at Lincoln Financial Field, which is the Eagle Stadium in Philly. It's the same place we went and saw the Reputation Stadium tour. I just remember being blown away by the show that she puts on, and I'm sure you could speak to this too. Hair flips and all. This girl can rock out a stadium. Like, she really just puts on a performance. And also, I'm going to say it, another critique, because Taylor can take it. Like, Taylor Swift can't dance. Like, she doesn't have the rhythm.
Seen, like, on TV wise or like performances, like, it's better when you don't try to.
That's what I'm saying. Like, she just doesn't, she's not a natural born dancer, and that's okay. She doesn't need to be. But the fact that she's still making the choreography work, and it's still such a phenomenal performance, just from like everything from like the stages and the lighting and everything is just such a phenomenal performance that it like you don't even notice that she can't dance. And it takes moments like awkward award show to like understand that she really is a terrible dancer. But still, she rises above. It's phenomenal. I just think she's incredible. But really put on a show. It was absolutely phenomenal. Can't say enough good things. But also, important to note, this was the tour where she had the surprise guests at every stop on the tour. Where like there was that one song that they would come out and it was just like a big like hype thing.
Bad Blood, the video that she had like the whole crew of them, right?
Exactly.
I forgot she had that like really strong like girl crew that.
Yeah. So I think this is where we really start to see the magnificent star power that she has. You know what I mean? Where first of all, she has all these celebrity best friends and then this wider celebrity network of like Ellen DeGeneres, Kobe Bryant, because she just sent one of her cardigans to his daughter. And it was just like beautiful. And they did this big like emotional thing. But like from all different realms of pop culture, she has these like mega, mega, mega stars coming to her show just to do a little cameo in the middle of her set. Like that's next level. You know what I mean? So we're really seeing like this girl's going to be around for a while. She has magnetic star power. It's incredible to watch. Plus, I looked this up. The 1989 World Tour grossed $258.7 million. That's insane.
Wow.
For one tour. One more thing about 1989 before we get into the newer albums. I think we're definitely like past the red stage of our lives if we're like tracking our lives based on the albums, because 22 we had that moment, but now I feel like we're phasing into the 1989 moment where it's like taking on a new city or having like a super formative romantic relationship in your life. Like I feel like we're experiencing the things that she talks about in 1989 now more, and that just like feels very cool. Taylor?
I feel like I'm still in red though.
That's I feel like I graduate, it's like we're done with that. Like I need to move on to the 1989. I need to like cut my hair and like change my life.
Yeah.
That's how I'm feeling. Anyway, okay, let's move on to Reputation. I have so many things to say about Reputation. I do not know if this is a hot take because I got into an argument with my sister on the way to Arkansas actually, because a song from Reputation came on our shuffle and she was like, yeah, kind of a flop from Taylor. Like this album just didn't really do it for me. And I was like, what?
Well, no, I think again it's a similar feeling to like when Red came out.
Okay.
It's like, oh, this is really, really different. I'm just gonna write it off.
Okay.
I need that in like a harsh way. It's just like, ooh, like this just isn't your vibe. I'm not connecting with it, and like I'm not feeling like this badass, powerful woman that's gonna like that just wasn't my energy when it came out. Like I was just like,
Right. No, that's totally fair to say.
I don't think I like really gave it the time. Like I didn't like listen to it the way that I had other albums.
I think that's fair. What I will say, I think this was true for Reputation and again for Lover. The first, like the initial singles that came out, I don't think were a good snapshot of the album as a whole. Those, I think, are the weirdest on the album, and the rest are kind of more on par with what we think of when we think Taylor Swift, where there's Nice Love. Like Gorgeous is a great, very like on the nose Taylor Swift song. It's like
Lively's daughter that does that like beginning. Yeah, I do like Gorgeous, and then I do like Getaway Car. Oh, and New Year's Day, that was my favorite.
That's your favorite. But I'm saying that's a great song. I think it's a good pick. My favorite, I would say, from the album is King of My Heart. I think that's my favorite. It's like, again...
I've never even listened to that.
Oh my god. So you have to revisit. I think you're just waiting for your moment to like get in the Reputation mind space, and then you're really going to you're going to call me and be like, I didn't know what I was missing. And you'll be like, definitely revisit. I think it's worth it. But yeah, I think there's a ton of bangers all around. Gorgeous was great. Getaway Car you mentioned. Don't Blame Me. Great. I also love... Girl, I also loved, because I went to this stadium tour too, which I mentioned, again, at the Eagle Stadium with Julie. Literally, the old Taylor is dead. Like, this was a very different vibe. She's still putting on a phenomenal show.
I was like, oh, she's dead.
No, she's dead. It was good. It's a rebirth. It's new. It's exciting. It's what you need.
I think what I've taken away from this is I'm not really great with change.
Allie likes things to say. That's fair. But I love the performance is great. The tour was wonderful. Now it's a Netflix special, so you can watch it. I've watched it half a dozen times this year. Like I just think it's so fun.
Netflix special, yes.
That's what I have to say about Reputation. Should we move on to Lover?
Yeah, I like that moment of silence.
Let's move on to Lover. Lover came out in August of 2019, right as we were beginning our senior years at Fordham University. And that is, I think, what I will forever associate this album with. And for that, I thank Taylor Swift. I'm thankful that she didn't wait until October, November like she normally had to release an album. Also, we had to wait an extra year for this. She was going every other year for the longest time, and then she waited 3 years to put out Lover. So we were all really on the edge of our seats.
Very confused for Folklore, because I was like, it hasn't even been a year.
I know. She really is just like messing up her own timelines, but again, I'm not mad at it. Lover was a moment. I think it's the best one. I don't know. I said that about all of them.
Yeah. I don't know where I'm at right now. I feel like we gotta go through all of them and then maybe I'll be able to make a choice. I don't know.
That's fair. Give me your favorite track from Lover.
Favorite track, The Man. Like, I loved it. It was like, if I were a man, I'd be the man or something like that. Yeah. All women, I feel like. Most women, it's like, if I were a man, you'd be praising me.
Totally. And again, this is a really cool thing that she does pretty consistently at this point, is take a critique, something that has tried to tarnish her reputation in the press, and like reclaimed it into something that's making her a ton of money. There's something so powerful about that. It's like, yeah, you can say all this stuff about me, but I'm going to write this killer song. Everyone's going to relate to it, and I'm coming out on top again and again and again. She is incredible. And it's so true. She like literally exposed misogyny in like a fun dance track. That is so cool.
Yeah.
I think my favorite from this album is Afterglow. I feel like I've had that song on repeat since it came out. I just think it's a cool, there's kind of an echoey vibe to the song. I love playing it super loud, or even like in your headphones really loud. I feel like you're at like a show and it's acoustic and it's just you and Taylor and she's just telling you about her life. That's the vibe I think of the whole album, where like you're sitting down with Taylor, you ask about the last year of her life, and she's like, let me sing to you about it. And it's just you and her, and it's this very intimate thing, and she just takes you through her experience, and it feels like you are a part of it, because in some ways you are, and that is the coolest thing to me. Okay, I don't know if I have much else to say. I think that's my favorite if I had to say right now. Lover itself, like as a song, is beautiful, and I love every bit of it. I think it's a beautiful song. I love it. The music video. You know how I feel about the music video.
I know.
Okay. Okay. Folklore, we already talked about the major vibe shift. It's definitely very different than Reputation. Obviously different than Lover even. Quarantine vibes, we talked all about it. But Allie, now I just want to get your favorite track. Tell me what's your favorite, why it's sticking with you.
My favorite track, I think it just rings true for me right now, Exile. It's really beautifully done. So
we love a good duet. She always has a couple like banger duets. My favorite from Folklore is August, and I don't really have a good reason why, except for that I just, on my first like run through of the album, that was the one that I kept wanting to go back to. I just think it has a more lighthearted vibe than the rest of them, but still the messaging is sad. You can really get into it. And we said that before, like if you take the time to really do it, which I really just haven't sat with it enough, because it just came out like when we're recording, it hasn't even been out a week. Like I haven't really parsed out the lyrics like I would like to, but that's what the rest of quarantine is for. Love the album. I'm excited to dive deeper into it than we already have, but any final notes on Taylor Swift?
I will return to Reputation for the sake of you, and you only, I think.
That's literally was going to be mine. Like my one takeaway is to make it my mission for you to revisit Reputation and to just allow yourself to feel it.
It might be the energy that I need, but I'm not ready for.
That's what I was going to say. You got to take your time, live in the Folklore bubble for another week or so, and then just immerse yourself into the Reputation energy, because I think I wrote on my Instagram story the other day when I was like reflecting on Taylor Swift, and I said the Reputation album forever in my mind will be the feeling of wearing power boots to class for the first time. Me and Emma have like a million pairs of them. They're like an ankle boot with a little heel, and you're like clacking on the thing, but they're easy to walk in. Anyway, power boots are the move always, but I was always so intimidated to wear a heel to class. Specifically, I don't know, like wearing to the city was one thing, but like to wear them to class was like demanding a certain level of attention that I don't know if I was comfortable with. Now, give me more. I'd wear a stiletto to class, you know what I'm saying? But I think at that time, it was, for me, it was a symbolic moment of like, I'm wearing my power boots, I'm like harnessing my Reputation moment, and I don't care what anyone thinks, even though I do still care what people think, but I'm getting out of that, you know what I'm saying?
That's, again, connects back to my realization, doing it for yourself. Who cares what anybody else does? So
exactly. What a good full circle way to wrap up the episode. Allie G, genuinely, thank you so much for doing this. I'm glad we got you on an episode. I'm sure there are many more to come because this honestly might have to be a two-parter. We really
I don't know.
Rock it out. If you like what you're hearing, please be sure to follow us on Spotify or subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, if you feel so inclined to do a rate and review situation, we would very much appreciate. You can also find us on Instagram for more content at h.e.r.blog.life, and you can find blog posts at herbloglife.online. We're getting better at posting more blog posts, so just stay with us on that. For behind-the-scenes videos of previous recordings, you can just search Rachel Malak on YouTube, and you'll find our YouTube channel with all the previous episodes, with a little bit of bonus content on there as well. That's all I got. As always, thank you for listening. Allie, thank you for joining. This has been so fun.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. I'm Rachel Malak. This has been the Her Life Blogcast.